Okay, Ms. Chair, it is now 5 o'clock. The meeting may start.
All right. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020, and the City of Sugar Land's Park Advisory Board monthly meeting is now called to order. As a reminder, following each presentation, I will ask if board members have comments, and I will call your name in alphabetical order. Item 2, public comments. Have we received any requests for public comments?
No, ma'am.
Oh, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 3, review of and discussion on the status of youth sports associations in Sugar Land. Joe Chesser, Director of Parks and Recreation. Thank you very much.
Give them a minute. They're having some internet issues.
Then we have a discussion on the status of youth sports associations in Sugar Land.
It seems there's
Hold on, Joe, you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that. On our end, our screen went out for a minute, so I missed Barbara's introduction, so sorry about that delay. But I'll jump into the presentation tonight. There's just the one presentation on the agenda tonight, well, plus the director's report. And what we're focusing on is the youth sports associations. And just to kind of give you an overview of that, plus the impacts from the COVID-19 on the leagues, and then to talk about one of the situations with one of the soccer leagues later on in the presentation. So the city has 9 youth sports associations that we have an agreement with at our various facilities that you see here on the screen. And then each sport has their own fields or facility there within those parks. The only ones that share is down at Lost Creek with the adult soccer, uses that complex in association with the youth sports complex. So next slide. So as you can imagine, with youth sports, the COVID-19 had quite an impact on it. Everything was suspended in March, but then as the governor started doing his reopening orders, he started to allow practices back on May 31st, and then said that games can resume on June 15th. We've been in constant contact with our leagues, talking to them about what their plans are, if they plan to resume or not. You can see the soccer and softball does, but the baseball, swimming aren't planning to right now. Next slide. So as part of their restarting their activities, there are some requirements set up by the state in the governor's orders. And we're sharing that information with the leagues and requiring them to provide us with their plans for operating their leagues safely before they resume on March 5th, or on, well, they've already started to practice, so they're available to practice. So we have asked them to submit their plans for keeping their folks safe, and then to sharing these health protocols with them, such as, you know, the kids are not as likely to get it or have severe symptoms, but they could pass on to someone at risk or an older person in their home, or if they go to visit. All the staff with the leagues needs to be learn all and get all the training for the appropriate cleaning and disinfection and hygiene, and then also respiratory etiquette, and make sure they're all trained to be on the lookout for that. The staff has to be screened daily for symptoms, and then they should also consider wearing face masks while they're out doing their practices or their games, if possible. Playing a sport with a mask probably isn't possible, but the coaches and other staff could do that. And each team is considered sort of their group. And as you know, the gathering limits are still in effect. So the expectation is that the teams don't interact any more than they absolutely have to, so they can keep their group together. And then if, for example, unfortunately, if someone did get sick in that group, it wouldn't spread way beyond that group to other groups. Next slide, please. And so when they start the games back up, spectators should remain 6 feet apart from each other, and it's up to the leagues to be able to maintain this separation. They'll need to monitor that and make sure that people are trying to stay separated as much as possible. Should encourage any of their spectators to wear masks. Supply sanitizer for all the teams, use before and after the games, and then make wipes and soap available. And they should use those wipes, throughout the game, and then also wash hands before and after the game. Next slide. So that kind of wrapped up what those protocols are and what we expect from the leagues. So now I'm going to go into each one of the leagues and give you an overview of the league and kind of where they are in the process. The Girls Softball Association plays at Imperial Park. They have approximately 600 participants for their spring and fall leagues. They're made up of 44% residents and 56 non-residents. Their boundaries are set by the Amateur Softball Association and are basically Fort Bend County. So their boundary goes beyond Sugar Land city limits. They provide recreational and competitive leagues. The COVID impact for them was the season was delayed, and they have just now resumed their practice schedule. Next slide. First Colony Little League is baseball, Little League Baseball at First Colony Park. They have approximately 600 participants, and they're a spring and fall league also. Their boundaries are set by the Little League, so they're more local to Sugar Land. Thus, they have a 61% resident to 39 non-resident participation. And then they're primarily a recreational league operating at the park under National Little League standards. They're eligible to go to College World Series or a Little League World Series. They have playoffs and all-stars and that sort of activity. Because their season would have almost been over by the time they were given the approval to resume at the end of May, they decided that they would go ahead and fully cancel their season and not try to resume it this year, but they do plan to restart in the fall. Next slide. Greater Sugar Land Pony and Colt. This group is also at First Colony Park, but plays on the larger fields. This is for the older age groups. They're not as active of a league as our other leagues are. We have not been able to get information from them about any plans to restart. They don't have specific boundaries. They're more of a competitive older age group league. So they're not as tied by Sugar Land boundaries. And then their COVID impact, they're not able to resume their season this spring. They haven't given us any information regarding their league, so they're not starting back up. Next slide, please. This is Sugar Land Little League at City Park. There are approximately 300 participants. They do a spring and a fall league. They're at 62% resident, 38 non-resident, and their boundaries are also like First Colony Little League set by the National Little League organization. They're a recreational league, and we've been in contact with them, but they do not plan to resume their season. They, again, would have almost been completed by the time they got the go ahead to resume. So they also plan to start back up in the fall. Next slide. The Sugarland Sharks, this is the swim team that at City Park. There are approximately 200 participants with 55% resident, 45% non-resident. Their boundaries are set by Southwest Houston Recreational Swimming League. And so they go a little bit beyond Sugarland's boundaries, the city limit boundaries. They're definitely recreational. They compete with other swim teams in this region. So they travel around and host some swim tournament or some swim meets at City Park. They looked real hard at trying to start back up because swimming pools were one of the things in the governor's orders that were going to be allowed to be open a little earlier. So they were trying to. They were seeing that their actual participants were reluctant to start up this year. So they did not get the numbers. So they decided to hold off and not hold their season. Just on a side note, we are, as a city, planning to open the pool at a point when we have lifeguards available and meet some of the criteria that we need to do as far as getting hand sanitizer stations and limiting capacity in the pool and making sure we have adequate lifeguards through our city vendor. We do not actually hire the lifeguards. It's through a professional pool company management company. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I think you skipped one. Go back. Yes, the Sugarland Cowboys. This is the football program that participates at City Park. It's not on the baseball fields. It's some of the open spaces. It's just a practice location for them. They have approximately 100 participants, 17% resident, 73% non-resident. Their boundaries are set by Fort Bend Football League, so they're not really specific to the Sugarland city limits. That's reflected in the higher number of non-residents on there. They're a recreational league that plays games generally at Kempner Stadium and then travel around a bit. They do not typically start until August. So as it looks right now, they should be okay to proceed. We'll just have to make sure that they meet all the protocols for safety before they get started. Next slide. The Sugarland Soccer Club, they are located at Eldridge Park with approximately 600 participants, play spring and fall. 14% resident, 86% non-resident plays there. They don't have boundaries. There is a recreational and a competitive league. They have resumed some practices. Their season is delayed. It looks like they may or may not do games, but they're definitely starting up with some practices out at the soccer fields. So they have submitted their information to let us know that they're following the safety protocol. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. I think you skipped one. I think we need to go back one slide.
Joe, can you hear me?
We need to go to the slide that says Fun, Fair, Positive Soccer. Back a couple.
Do you see it now?
Yes, I see it. Thank you. Fun, Fair, Positive. They play on a really small, reduced size field. They're very geared to the youngest age group. They also are at Eldridge Park. They have their own separate field at Eldridge Park. This is a kind of a regional soccer organization. So they have a very low resident participation and a high non-resident participation. And then the organization sets the boundaries, so they're definitely beyond our city limits that participate at the park. They're purely a recreational league, and they also have like a special needs opportunities for kids for league play for special needs kids. They will not resume this spring. They will start back up in the fall. Next slide, please. Okay, Fort Bend Adult Soccer. They play at Lost Creek Park. They're our adult league. They are our secondary group at the park. They have 450 participants. They're a spring and fall league. They have 15% resident, 85% non-resident that participation. They don't have boundaries. They're purely recreational. The season is delayed, but they have resumed practices out at the park. So they have submitted their forms for our approval for them to restart. Okay, next slide. Next slide.
Joe, is Rise Soccer the next slide?
Yes.
I believe that's up then.
Okay. If I keep asking, it may be not showing up on my screen. It may be delayed because of my connection. So excuse me if I'm kind of repeating myself because I'm not seeing the same thing y'all are. Rise Soccer is at Lost Creek Park. There will approximately 750 participants, and they're a spring and fall league with 30% resident, 70% non-resident. They don't have boundary and recreational league. Their season is delayed, but they have started back up with their practices. And I wanted to note they're our recognized youth sports association at Lost Creek Park. And this is one of the second things I wanted to talk about in this presentation is Rise Soccer's organization at Lost Creek Park. So next slide, please. Okay, a little background on Lost Creek Park. It was completed in 1997. And at the time, the recognized YSA was called First Colony Soccer Club. They're a very localized soccer club, basically mostly all local Sugar Land residents that lived in the immediate area. Which kind of brought on a
I believe his connection is messing up at the moment.
Sorry about that. My screen went blank, and now it's back up. So hopefully we can get through this and it won't happen again.
Joe, if you begin right after the second bullet, that's when we lost you.
Okay, you lost me at, on the second, after the second bullet or on the second?
Yeah, with talking about Eclipse.
I'm sorry, what?
We need the information on Eclipse forward.
Okay. So they evolved into Eclipse Soccer and became a bit more competitive and a little bit broader boundaries. And then Eclipse merged with what was called Houston Express on January 1st in 2017. And then they changed their name to Rise Soccer Club at the end of that season. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to include some pictures of Lost Creek Park, just so you kind of get a visual understanding of the site and the soccer fields. It's a very, very nice soccer complex. It's all lighted fields. There's 7 lighted fields and then 3 unlighted fields. in the power line easement. There's really good parking, nice amenities. There's a picnic pavilion there, and a meeting room building. So they have a lot of nice facilities there at the site. So I just kind of wanted to include that just so you can kind of get if you hadn't been there in a while or hadn't been there, you could get a kind of a picture of the site to know what I'm talking about. So next slide, please. So after Rise became the primary soccer user at Lost Creek Park, we started to see a little bit of a decrease in play at Lost Creek. And then they used to also use Settlers Way Park, which is a smaller park over off Settlers Way, for practices and the youngest kids' games. And then we also saw a decrease in the amount of recreational play, which is typically more residents and younger players. And we saw an increase in more of a competitive play with this league. And we started to hear some concerns voiced by residents and other soccer organizations in the city.
Joe, could I ask a question right now? Only because this is a PowerPoint, and just so we don't have to try to find it later. This is Barbara Gresham. What does increase in competitive play mean?
Okay, that means, well, you have recreational, which is typically younger kids starting that don't really know if they like soccer all that much or not. So they're kind of learning. They're just taking off. They only want to play games there at Lost Creek Park. They don't want to travel around to other parks and other cities to play a higher level or a more competitive level of soccer. And then from the recreational leagues, you move into the more competitive leagues. And this isn't unique to soccer. Baseball tends to do it too, but it's a little more widespread in soccer. And the competitive leagues, generally they have trainers. The parents have to pay more for the player to play on one of these teams because of the higher level training. They also travel around to other parks and other cities to play their games. It just generally becomes a more intense level of play for soccer.
Well, what would be the names of those clubs again?
Rise is more of a, what we found is they're a bit more on the competitive side and haven't been as strong on the recreational side, which means a lot of our younger kids, we don't believe necessarily have the best opportunity to play there at Lost Creek Park. There are some other organizations that seem to be geared more to that. There's a group called Southwest Texas Soccer Association, STISA, that kind of oversees the competitive play, and Rise is part of that organization. And we have no issue with competitive play. It's just we want to kind of make sure that all aspects of soccer are being met here in the community. So with that, if that's okay, I'll go to the next slide. So we've talked to Rise about some of the concerns that we have, and there's some other soccer leagues in the area that have come to us with some interest about, they brought forward to us that it seems like some of the age groups and some of the use isn't what it was, and would be interested in talking to us about utilizing the facility. And the reason we have one recognized group at each facility, at each park, is because the scheduling of the fields and just the operations of working with the boards, it only really works if you have one specific organization that you're working with at a particular park on a particular set of fields. So to do that, we're not saying that we're totally unhappy with Rise and that there's a problem, but we feel like we owe it to the community and to the citizens of Sugar Land to make sure that they're being served in the best way possible there at Lost Creek Park. So what we're proposing to do is to put together a panel of staff and possibly some Parks Board members onto a committee, and then ask the leagues to submit proposals indicating, their interest in being the selected YSA for Lost Creek and Settlers Way Park. And then what we're proposing to do is look at those proposals and kind of grade out to see who we think would be the best organization to serve the needs of the community. And then what we would do is make a selection with that group, make them the recognized sports association, and then basically have them on a kind of a 2-year probation period, if you will, just to kind of make sure they're meeting the expectations of what they set in their presentations to the Parks Department for our recommendations. Like I said, we're not saying that RISE is not a good group. We're not saying that at all. We think they're a good organization. It's just that they have kind of shown that their participation levels aren't what we've seen in the past, and they aren't really necessarily what we would expect from them, and they've been made aware of that. But we also feel like we should look out there and see if there's other groups that might be more geared to meeting the specific needs there at Lost Creek Park, which is our real goal, is to make sure, number one, and we've told the groups this, our number one priority is that the Sugar Land residents that live especially in that area towards Lost Creek Park, are well served by the soccer community. And we want to make sure the youngest age groups, and then just the kind of passive players, the younger players, the ones that don't want to go heavy into competitive, also have an opportunity to get out and play. And in the past with Eclipse, they were able to have both recreation league and a competitive league, and we don't really see any reason why we can't continue to have that level of activity there at the park. So that's why we're proposing going through kind of this process with them. And I'm not really asking for the Parks Board, to jump in and be real involved right now, but I'd like to get your general feedback right now on where we are with this. And I'd like to answer any questions you might have regarding this particular issue. And with that, kind of goes to the next slide, which is questions.
Thank you very much, Joe. Again, I'll be calling names alphabetically, and Hojin, I put you back in order rather than put you on the spot about being first. So in alphabetical order then for board member comment.
We're having Barbara cutting out again.
Am I cutting out again?
No.
No, everybody's, I see a lot of heads saying that I'm okay.
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can hear you now, but I can hear you now.
Great. In alphabetical order for board member comment, we'll begin with Heather Gillen. Heather?
Hi, everyone. The only comment I have, Joe, is just thinking about the 2-year reevaluation. I think just letting them know that it is just a reevaluation, because I think one of the concerns is if you have chosen a YSA and then a family has their student participate in this YSA and they like to participate every year, and then they find out the 3rd year that maybe they're gone, that's always tough. Like for me, like when I have my kids, like I like to keep, like we've had our kids.
Heather's cutting in and out.
No, she's
I'm
fine.
not hearing much.
I think it's on your end, Joe.
I think the rest of us are hearing fine. So
It must be our connection here must be the problem. Barbara, I can see you. Could you recap the question?
In summary, I will just say that it's just letting the YSAs know that it's just a reevaluation, and there is an opportunity for them to stay for more than just 2 years. And I think that might be encouraging for the YSAs.
Thank you, Heather. I believe John Hanson was not able to make our meeting tonight, so I will move to
I'm
Kelsey,
sure that we get that.
Kelsey Johnson.
I was just curious as far as you said that the level of usage at Las Vegas.
Our end is freezing up.
Okay. Could I ask my question in the chat? Could that work?
It's a good idea.
Okay.
So my question is around, I'm typing it into the chat, but my question is around the level of participation or field usage at Lost Creek Park. I know my son plays recreational with Rise Soccer, and they moved all of the, fall and spring games from Saturdays from Lost Creek Park to Siena. And so I wonder I wonder why they're not playing their games at Lost Creek Park.
Let me see if I can move to hers.
A part of wanting to move it away from there.
So Kelsey, are you going to go ahead with the chat?
I'm going to do the chat. Y'all can move on if you want to use.
Okay. I've got a different. Okay.
We're going to wait on Joe here and see if we're...
Okay, I had to get onto a phone. I do apologize. This is an internet connection issue that we're having in our whole building over here. So buyers have a problem and PARCS as well. So I apologize, but I'd have to ask you to repeat the questions. Kelsey, the last I heard from Kelsey was that she does participate in Rise, but then that's the last I heard.
Thank you, Kelsey, for repeating.
Sure. So I thought I heard you say, Joe, that a part of your decision around reevaluating Rise at Lost Creek Park was around field usage. They aren't utilizing the fields as much. The level of participation has gone down. I know that from my son's experience playing there, they still have their practices there, but all their games have been moved to Camp Siena. Whereas in the past, they were playing and practicing at Lost Creek Park. So is that affecting the decision as well?
That's the sort of thing that does play into the decision making process. I mean, that's some of the things that we've heard is, that people have to travel around to different places just to be able to play their soccer games, and they don't utilize our facilities as much. So we don't really know right now. We've talked to them and we don't really exactly know why that's the case. They said that, they did say that their numbers dropped quite a bit, and they're trying to move people around where they need to put them. So and they've told us they were going to work on trying to build back up their recreational program and get it back up and going. But our kind of feeling is we're kind of disappointed that they ever let it get to that point where they had to rebuild it. So that is some of the issue.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Thank you. And it's nice to have somebody that is involved with soccer in the youth soccer area, to provide us really good input on that. So we appreciate that.
Moving on to comments from Ho Jin Lim.
So thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Really more of it's a comment rather than a question, but I do appreciate that y'all are evaluating, making sure that because my daughter, when she was young, she did like the idea of playing soccer as a recreation, not more on a competitive side. So I do like that you're making sure that at least there's a recreational side as well as a competitive side as part of that. And the evaluation, I actually like the idea of evaluation, partly because that way if they start changing aspects of the type of soccer, if they all go competitive, it makes it tougher for young girls, my daughter, I'm going to use my example, that want to get into it. And obviously they would have to start with some type of recreational rather than going straight to competitive. So I do like the idea of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ho-Jin. Moving on to Kelsey Lowe.
Oh, there we go. My only question would be, is RISE eligible to reapply, I guess? Would they be allowed to submit an evaluation or information for evaluation?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And I guess the only other thing that I would ask is what kind of things might be looked at in the evaluation? Like what kind of things would groups need to provide to be evaluated?
It would be just an overview kind of their philosophy of soccer, look at how many participants they would have, what their area would be that they anticipate drawing from, how they would propose. We expect our leagues to have a certain level of maintenance on the fields. They stripe it, they take care of the nets, the flagging, activities like that. So there's a number of criteria, and we'll be working towards developing that criteria, and we would send that out to a basically a request for proposal from them. And so each group would get the same information to be able to draw from to develop their proposal.
Okay, thanks. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Kelsey. Moving on to Andy Fan.
Hi, everybody. Just want to, I guess, iterate exactly what everyone else has said before. I know Heather mentioned something about, I guess, like, what was that she said? The whole thing about participation and everything, but then also what Kelsey said, something about, I guess, field usage. But I think what really got to me was actually about the maintaining what I think what Ho-Jin said about, getting the recreational play, and you're concerned about how people, going into the competitive play, and you want to make sure it's still open because some people want to just test the waters out and have their, children come in and try to test the waters out and play recreation before it jumps into the, I guess, the competitive play. And it's good to get that regulation back, trying to kind of reevaluate and make sure that they kind of fall in line with what's, adaptive to what, the people of Sugarland wants, or the people who are outside coming into Sugarland. And that's about it. That's mainly a comment, and that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Tracy Pipes.
Hi. I appreciate everybody's comments. I agree. And I just wanted to, I don't really have any experience with soccer because I always felt like when my kids were little, there was never a good place to go try out recreational soccer. So maybe this is a great idea to get, kind of like a little league type of thing going on. So you have a better recreational thing starting out with the little kids. And then within that league at the soccer fields, they can rent out space for the club teams, kind of like how the little leagues do now. The club teams rent out fields or I guess schedule it through those little leagues. Am I right?
Yes, more or less. The YSA, the Little League, has the priority use.
Right.
And then I think they have some that are associated with the league, some of the competitive teams that are associated with the league that they work with. But then there's some other teams that come directly and rent field space from us. So, yeah, there's different ways to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great idea to make it a priority to be a rec fields and teach those younger kids how to play. I'm done.
Thanks, Tracy. I believe that Kelly Reynolds was not able to make the meeting, so moving on to Barbara Gresham. I certainly concur with everyone, with what everyone has to say. And knowing that we have a lot of young families moving into our community, I think it's really important to evaluate how we can best serve those that have young children who are looking for, different sports options. So I think this is a great idea, Joe. Thank you very much for presenting it.
We were having technical difficulties when Heather was talking, so I don't think we got her input. Would you mind going back for just a second to Heather?
Oh, Heather Gillen, can you present again?
Hey, Joe, no problem.
I'm sorry about that. You were just cutting in and out, but I wanted to make sure we were able to capture what you said.
Yeah, I had just mentioned that I agree that I do like the evaluation. I just wanted to mention that when you mention that to the YSAs as they get evaluated, that they have a chance to stay after the 2 years. Because as a parent that puts their kids in these leagues, I like it when they stay for years so that I don't have to look at someplace else to go to bring them. So I was just saying, mention that maybe when you explain what an evaluation is, and that there is an opportunity for them to renew their stay there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a unique situation for us because almost all of our leagues have been there for many, many, many years. We've not gone through a process like this before because they are also stable, and most of them have been there for, like Sugarland Little League's been there since the 1950s. So, this is an unusual situation, but we felt like what we were hearing and seeing warranted at least investigating this and trying to go through and see if there is something that needs to be done to improve it. But yeah, on the 2 years, we would really hope that they're very successful and doing very well and everybody's happy. But we didn't want to, if we select some group and they make a whole lot of promises to us, we just want to make sure that they live up to the commitment that they give us. Is basically why we're kind of putting them on that kind of 2 year period to review it. So thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Well, that concludes the comments. So we'll move forward to item 4, Director's Report. Joe Chester, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. We just wanted to touch on some of the stuff that's been going on at the Butterfly Garden at Sugarland Memorial Park. We've got a very diligent volunteer. He's like, I think he's 9th grade, and his mom brings him to the Butterfly Garden. And I don't have his name right now, but we were just talking about this in the office the other day. He set up a website specifically for the Butterfly Garden, and he's been a really, really amazing volunteer for us out there. And the garden itself has come along a lot this spring. So if you're at Memorial Park, and it's over by the kind of the farther windmill area as you go along the trail there. So just wanted to plug that facility. Funland's been working closely with the volunteers out at the Butterfly Garden, and it's looking really good now. Other projects, as you know, and hopefully y'all have not experienced at your homes, a lot of trees blown down or branches blown down, but we've experienced a lot of it in the parks. So in the last few weeks with these big storms, we've had a lot of cleanup to do in the park. So if you happen to see any debris laying around, it's just that we haven't gotten to all of it picked up yet. In some cases, we've had some really, really large trees fall down. We had an enormous one at Cullinan Park that fell, but fortunately it actually wasn't on our property, but it fell from an adjacent property over into ours, but it was an enormous tree. Next slide, please. We've continued to do the virtual classes through Zoom and on YouTube. They've been really popular with the seniors program. So we've continued to look for things with various instructors, from dance classes to yoga. It's been very, very popular. It's something we think we will continue to do even after we open the center back up if possible. And then also part of the governor's orders was that youth camps can open back up. So some of the sports camps that we do in the summer, the basketball and volleyball camps, we're working with the vendors that put those on to make sure that they have the safety protocols in place to be able to hold their camps. But we think it would be a healthy thing for the kids to be able to do, to get out in the summer and participate in some activities. So we're going to work with those groups to get those camps back up and going. Other than that, we've got our staff kind of back into the offices, and we haven't opened up all of our facilities, but we have opened up IPRC for pickleball and badminton and table tennis, which have all been very popular. The classes, the recreational classes are coming back online. Some of the instructors have been kind of slow to get back up and running, getting their participants back up and geared up to go, but they seem to be slowly getting back into a rhythm in their classes. So we're excited to do that. We're not trying to rush anybody into it, but we're just trying to make sure that if they meet the safety protocols, we want to be able to be there and try to accommodate their uses. Along that line, the swimming pool, like I said earlier, we're trying to get it open this summer. And then some of the other facilities that we still have closed, we're looking at opening those up, but we're not planning on taking reservations for facilities just yet. And obviously, we're not ready to open up the senior center just yet. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions regarding the director's report.
Heather, do you have any comments or questions?
No comments.
Okay. Moving on to Kelsey Johnson, if you have any questions or comments.
All good here. Thanks.
Thanks, Kelsey. How about you, Ho-Jin?
No comments. Sorry, I just had problems unmuting myself, so no comments though.
No, we understand it takes a minute to unmute. Andy Fan, any comments?
Unmute. No. Everything's good. Good job, guys.
Okay. Tracy Pipes.
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Well, that concludes, I believe, our comments. And Joe, do you anticipate that we will be continuing to have Zoom meetings for July?
I think we probably will. I know that the city council is looking at trying to get back to meetings in the chamber at some point in July. But I think for now, we would probably continue to do ours in Zoom, at least for maybe the next one or at least the next two. So I think everything's gone fine except for the glitch we had in our system here today. So it seems to be working fairly well. So I think we'll probably just keep it going for a little while.
My one question would be about an upcoming event in July, and that's July 4th. I know you've given us some preview information on what potentially can be happening. Since our meeting would be after July 4th in July, will we be getting any emails or any information on plans or wanting us to volunteer for anything if there's any in-person activity?
We will let you know. There's still discussions going on regarding July 4th with city management, city council. There's definitely concerns about the gatherings and distancing and concerns like that. So any additional information will be forthcoming.
Thank you. And the other question is the dog park. I believe it is now open.
Yes, it was one of the first things we were able to open back up. Just so you know, we have a doctor that works with the city who's sort of our advisor on things. And so we've met with him and he, worked through what he felt like we needed to do to be able to open our facilities back up, which is mostly hand sanitizer availability, because mostly it's touch surfaces and parks that are concerned, because a lot of the things that we do, like dog park and skate park, that you don't have a lot of real close proximity to other people. So once we got those measures in place, we opened it back up.
And all is running well. I can see William shaking his head yes.
Yes.
William, do you have any comment to make?
Not really, Barbara. Just adding to what Joe said. Staff is, keeping an eye on disinfecting restrooms and bench surfaces, as well as what Joe mentioned with the disinfectant hand soap. So all seems well so far. Skate park's very busy. Dog park is very busy.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, William. And thank all of you for attending the meeting tonight. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, Hojin made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Andy seconded that motion. So our June meeting is adjourned, and it was nice seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.